would you respond if someone were to ask you the question? Let's say they found out that you were Catholic or Christian. How would you respond to the very common question that sometimes follows that? When they would say to you, how do you do it? Why do you do it? They've got all of these rules, all these things that you can't do, and fun is on the list. No fun, right? That's the reputation. And all of these lists of things that you're supposed to do. It seems like there are more rules than you could possibly follow. How? How can you do that? Why would you choose to do that? What would your response be? Now, it could be that you have no response, because it would be very normal if you're sitting here saying, listening to me say these words, and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering that myself. I'm struggling with that myself. What am I supposed to do? What I would offer to you is one of the themes of our second reading and our gospel. Because there's something going on, and you got to look kind of close to hear what's being said. St. Paul, in the second reading, uses one of his favorite metaphors for being a disciple of Jesus Christ. Living the life of a Christian, he often refers to in the terms of being an athlete. Over and over again in different parts of his letters, when he's writing to different people, he talks about the life of being a disciple in terms of being an athlete. Here, in the second letter to Timothy, he writes, I have run the race. I have competed not as one who is, he's saying this in another part, sorry, I'm getting mixed up, but I'll say it anyway. I've competed not as one who is running for an imperishable crown, but here he says, I am awaiting the crown of righteousness that will be bestowed on me. What does it mean? It's a nice image, right? He's not talking about some random tiara or some royal crown. What his hearers 2,000 years ago might have understood, he was talking about an Olympic crown. You remember the original Olympic Games were begun in Greece and were continuing, even as St. Paul was alive, even as Jesus walked the earth and all of the apostles were alive. The Olympic Games happened every 4 years. The original version, not the ones that we have on TV now. And the original version of the Olympic Games, when somebody ran a race and they won, what was their trophy? Does anyone remember? It was a crown of olive branches. The person who won the race got a perishable crown of olive branches. That was it. There were no gold, silver, or bronze medals. It was just a crown of branches. So when St. Paul talks about, I have run the race and I haven't competed for a crown that is perishable, but one that is imperishable, he's exactly talking about his faith as if it were an athlete. Think about the life of an athlete. Think about the dedication. I'm not talking like a bowler, right? You know, I used to be a bowler when I was in college. That's not the kind of athlete I'm talking about. This is a bowler's body right here. I'm talking about a real athlete. I don't mean to disparage those who enjoy bowling. Somebody who sets their alarm in the morning because their entire day is planned out around that single-minded dedication and discipline of becoming better as an athlete. They got out of bed at a certain time every day because they planned their day. They know what they're having for breakfast because they're following a dietary plan to maximize the strength, the endurance, and the stamina of their body. They spend their day dedicated to what they have to do, and then their free time to practice, to training, to even studying their sport, improving their technique, learning from coaches, gathering with others, late nights, early mornings. Their imagination is filled with thoughts about their pursuit, their efforts, their game, their contest, their competition, their life. revolves around a single-minded joy of the discipline of athletic competition. Think about what Jesus said in the gospel. Two people went to pray. One, the Pharisee, who was obviously filled with self-righteousness. For him, religion was this long list of rules. And so he could be convinced of his holiness because he goes before God, and Jesus says he didn't offer a prayer to God. No, he prayed to himself when he said, "Oh, I'm so grateful that I've followed all the rules. I'm such a good person," he's saying. "I'm not like everybody else. I don't lie. I don't cheat. I'm not an adulterer. I'm not like that tax collector over there." And then he lists all the things he does right. I pray twice a day. I fast. I give up things. And I give away my money to the temple. Over and over, the self-righteous Pharisee is convinced of his goodness. Why? Because for him, religion was a long list of rules, and he had convinced himself that he had followed all of them. Everything he wasn't supposed to do, he avoided. And everything he was supposed to do, he had done. So for him, he was convinced that he was righteous. He was convinced that his relationship with God was the way that it was supposed to be. And this tax collector, a man who knew that he was struggling with sin, a man that knew his life hadn't really probably measured up to what God was calling of him, still had the heart, the humility, and the faith to ask God, "Please, Lord, be merciful to me." And Jesus says, the tax collector went justified. And that means, it's a fancy theological word, that means his relationship with God was put together correctly. He was in a relationship with God. All he did was ask for mercy, and God fixed that relationship. That's what justification means. But the Pharisee who had followed all the rules was not justified. And this is the point. What would it look like if this week we dedicated ourselves to praying about our own discipleship athletics? What would it look like if we began to imagine our own life as a follower of Jesus Christ, our own struggle for morality? What would it look like if we thought about that in the metaphor of an athlete rather than the metaphor of a to-do list? How would that change the way that you live? How would that change the way that you're in a relationship with God? How would that change the way in which our world tends to beat you up by saying, you better be perfect, you better follow all the rules, and the moment you break any one of the rules, then all of a sudden the message is, you're not wanted, you're not welcome, you're broken, you're too far gone. What would it look like if we thought of ourselves as athletes rather than folks with a to-do list? Here's the thing I love about athletics, even though I don't do much athletic things. There's always room for imperfection. When's the last time any athlete was honest with themselves and said, yeah, I could get a little faster, I could get a little stronger, I had a bad day of practice, or that meet, or that match, or that competition, I don't know why, I just wasn't there, I had a bad day. How often do we allow those who are in the athletic pursuits to have a bad day? My football team got beat so bad today, it's embarrassing. They had a really bad day. And that's the beauty of the athletic pursuit, is there's always room to grow, and there's always room to not be perfect. But if we have a to-do list, if our morality is simply a to-do list, then there's no room to be imperfect. We fall into the trap of perfectionism. We fall into the trap of self-righteousness. Over and over and over again, St. Paul begs of us to think about our life as followers of Jesus as either athletes, and there's one other section where he talks about us as soldiers. Very similar, a very dedicated life of discipline and training. I propose to you, this is a much better way of thinking about our life as disciples. If we dedicate ourselves, because the entire life of an athlete or a soldier is revolving around a single focused self-discipline, whereas the to-do list, once you're done with it, right, you're kind of done with it. Go do whatever you want. This is what it is to be a Christian. I deeply believe this is a far better understanding of being a disciple than simply that long to-do list or an oppressive set of rules. Don't get me wrong, the rules are important. I'm not saying to ignore them. But don't let them guide your life as a disciple of Jesus. Follow St. Paul. Run the race. Strive to win a crown, because unlike the Olympics, everyone can receive the same crown. Because if we dedicate ourselves, every moment of our life, our imaginations, our efforts, our desires, the longings of our heart, if in some way we just take another little step closer to that, we too may someday win that crown. This is the point, the crown being eternal life. This is the point. The point is to grow in our relationship with Jesus Christ, not to check off all things on our to-do list. Pray about that this week. And if you're not praying every day, even for a few minutes, maybe start there. That's a good place to start. Think about this. What would that look like if I thought of my life as a disciple of Jesus Christ in terms of an athlete? Talk to an athlete. We got a bunch of them sitting right here. Talk to them. What does that look like? What does discipline look like for you? How can we work this out so that I can grow in my relationship with Jesus Christ, as St. Paul told us to do, to run that race, to seek the prize, and to strive for that crown of righteousness, which is eternal life.